Hello, my name's Stuart. I am the unrepentant atheist, and I'm doing a series of videos, readings from the Bible. And I've got my NIV here, New International Version. On my previous video, some people have been saying that, there are other versions which are better, other versions in English, and there are some who go further than that and say, go back to the Hebrew. Well, I don't read Hebrew, so I've got to make use of English Bibles, so we'll have to make do with that. And if you're going to argue that those who are not reading the original Hebrew are not getting the Bible, well, then very, very few people in the world are actually getting the Bible, because how many people actually can read ancient Hebrew? So, yeah, so I did the creation story, myth, what have you. I'd just like to say that I acknowledge that a lot of people, maybe even most Christians, don't take the Bible literally. Some do, I know that. But even if you're not going to take the Bible literally, the stories have still got their own internal logic, which has to be unraveled and rationalized. And that's mainly what I'm doing here. I'm trying to I'm trying to sort of understand how the stories were constructed, and maybe find some of the meanings in there which we can relate to, and trace what was going through the minds of the people, writers that constructed Genesis. Because obviously I believe that, obviously as an atheist, this is not inspired by God. It's not the word of God. It was simply written by people who were trying to get a religion going, and they were trying to account for where did the human race come from, where did the world come from, etc. And this is their way of doing it. I also understand that in the ancient Hebrew, that God is actually translated. The original, we have God in the singular, but they actually have gods. So in the beginning, God's created the heavens and the earth, and only later on they changed it to a monotheistic God. So I find that quite interesting. So okay, let's forget about the actual creation of the earth, the heavens, etc., and let's just move on to the creation of animals, man. So verse 24, we have God creating the wild animals, creatures, etc. And then we've got verse 26. Now, was Adam the first man? A lot of people say, according to the Bible, Adam was the first man. But here we have in verse 24, in verse 26, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. Verse 27, so God created mankind in his own image. So here we have verse 27, God is actually creating man in his own image. So again, this is the thing. Anthropomorphic God is actually in the shape of is actually like a sort of a human being, but is a God. So you know, yeah. So verse 28. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. So he's saying there that man is going to be the supreme being on earth in his creation, that he's going to rule over all the other creatures. So yeah, divine favoritism, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So there we are. There we have man being created and populating the earth. Yeah. And we learn that God is actually in the shape of a man himself. So Um, so we have the Sabbath. Yeah, God finished His work, etc. He made the seventh day. He made it holy. We know about that. And here we come to Adam and Eve. So let's have a look. Yeah. So what happens with Adam and Eve? So God makes Adam. He's got this amazing garden, Eden, and he makes Adam from the dust in the ground, and he breathes life into him. So we've got Adam, and Eve is made. God decides that Adam needs a helper, and at first he gives him various beasts, I think, which none of which prove to be useful to him. And he realizes that Adam needs somebody pretty much like himself. So he waits till he falls asleep. He takes one of his ribs, and he makes a woman out of just one of Adam's ribs. I mean, what does that say? I don't know if you've read Kate Millet's Sexual Politics, but as far as I remember, it's a brilliant book on feminism and the origins of, I suppose, male dominance of females in history. And it does go back and look at the Bible. And I remember reading about the creation story and how that, what does this say about woman, that she's made by just one of Adam's ribs? That essentially she's come from man, so she's less than he is, far less if she's just made from one rib. And you can see, in fact, how this whole narrative is building the male into the supreme living being on earth, and he's going to rule not only over the creatures but over females as well, because we come to the famous fall. Yeah, so we've got the fall, which you know the story. I won't bother repeating it, but this is the origin, as I'm sure you know, of original sin. This is the reason that Jesus eventually had to come and die for this sin and all sins, original sin. And so, yeah, there are one or two things in the fall that I just want to mention, which I noticed, which I don't know might be significant, but it seems to me there's a lot of lying going on here, and there's a lot of deceit. And oddly enough, the one creature who's accused of deceit is the one really that is telling the truth, and God is dishonest, and Adam and Eve are also dishonest. So I'd just like to explain my reasoning for saying that. So God has already commanded that one particular tree is not to be eaten of, and they're to keep this rule. Yeah, so the snake, the famous snake, comes to Eve, and it's important for me to read out what the snake actually says because it will become relevant. So he says to, yeah. So the woman repeats back, Eve repeats back to the snake what the rule is, that you will die if you eat from this tree in the middle of the garden. And the snake replies, you will certainly not die. Well, that's true, isn't it? I just want to point out, he says you will certainly not die. And that turns out to be true. Yeah? For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened. Well, that's true as well. And you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And that is also true. So the benefit of this tree is that it will give Adam and Eve all the knowledge, or, a lot of the knowledge which only God possesses. Their eyes will be opened. They will have a level of wisdom which is maybe not on the same level as God's, but certainly more than he allowed them to have. And the whole point about the tree of knowledge is that if you can't eat from it, it keeps you in ignorance. And I think this is a theme which we see running through the whole of history, that the church has tried to keep people in ignorance. that there were only a small number of people who were able to read the Bible, and it was their job to interpret to the flock. And I mean, it runs through from the story of Adam and Eve all the way, maybe even to the present day, that the church is still trying to keep people in ignorance to a large extent. They tried to do it with science, and they tried to suppress scientific findings with Galileo and everything, and it just all, you can see that this is really the roots of the religion as we've got it now. And even the people who are denying evolution and trying to assert that God is the creator, in a way, they're also advocating ignorance. The less you know, the better. And this is the meaning that I take from the tree of knowledge. You're not to take from the tree of knowledge. You're to be kept in ignorance. And moreover, you're to be obedient. So obedience and ignorance are two of the key hallmarks of Christianity. And don't say, oh, well, that's the Old Testament. No, because Jesus said he's coming to fulfill the covenant. He wants to, there's nothing that Jesus said which contradicts anything which happened in the Old Testament. He's come to fulfill all the prophecies. And so let's not get back into that. Let's come back to this whole point that the snake is actually speaking truth. So the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good, and she ate it, etc., and also desirable for gaining wisdom. You see, it's in people's nature. They're curious. They want to have wisdom. They want knowledge. And God is suppressing them by forbidding them from taking from the tree of knowledge. And the snake actually is helping to liberate people by giving them knowledge, by encouraging them to take the fruit. So yes, so she ate the fruit, and then she gave some to Adam. It doesn't really make it clear here whether when she gave Adam the fruit that she told him it was from the tree of knowledge or not. It doesn't really make it clear. Yeah, it just says she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Maybe in other translations it will shed some light on that, because it really doesn't say whether he knew he was eating from the tree of knowledge or not. So God comes and they hide because they're naked, and God suddenly realizes, etc., that they've eaten from the tree. And then the woman said, "The snake deceived me and I ate." Well, that's a lie. Again, I don't know how this is translated. Maybe deceived is translated some other way. Maybe persuaded. I don't know. I've only got this translation here. But there's another lie. So far we've got God lying, saying that you'll die if you eat from the tree of knowledge. And we've got Eve lying as well, claiming, shifting the blame, shifting the burden onto the snake, unjustifiably so. Now, I'm sure that some of you will come and say, you don't know how to read scripture. Well, okay. Enlighten me. What am I getting wrong here? Obviously, I haven't had the benefit of sitting in Bible classes like you have. Well, at least not since I was a child. And I haven't had the benefit of some pastor or priest dancing around and in a convoluted way, trying to explain why this is all good. Okay, so God curses the snake and makes it so that he's going to crawl on his belly, and the offspring of the woman and the man is going to step on its head. And for the woman's punishment for this is the pain of childbirth, which will be very severe, and painful labor. And moreover, verse 16, chapter 3, Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Now, this is a whole thing that Kate Millett was getting at in Sexual Politics. It's there, and you can see that that is so blatant. I don't know. There's absolutely no way of erasing that line out of history. I'm sure that maybe if the church could do it, they would wish that that line wasn't there, because it doesn't match up today with modern political correctness and the whole concept of feminism and sexual equality. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work at all. And there's so much in the Bible that does not align with our modern worldview and way of doing things. But this is one of the origins of the word was sacred. The written word in particular, if something was written down in ancient times, it had a kind of authority to it. The fact that it was written, people put more credence on it, and particularly with it being a holy book. You know, this is something that men could have taken to women and said, have you seen what it says in the book? This is the word. This is the word of God. I'm to rule over you. What can I say? Times have changed, but the book remains the same. And I reject claims that you can bring this religion up to date, because if God's wisdom is constant and unchanging, then what applied then should apply now. This is one of the reasons that I'm resistant and critical of Christians who say, well, you know, that's the Old Testament, that's how they did things in those days, but, you know, it's not really valid. Well, I don't really see how you can argue that, because God's wisdom is unchanging, and what was good then should, in theory, be good now as well. God was perfect then, and he's perfect now. And so, of course, there are a lot of people that still believe this anyway. Okay, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree. Yeah, cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it. So this is like this is like justifying labor, the hard labor of everyday life. That if people are in the field toiling away with their crops, yeah, anybody that complains, just blame Adam and Eve, because they messed it all up, and that's why we have to toil. That's why we have to work. We could have had it had we not messed it up and been disobedient. Had we not been thirsty for knowledge, it would have been completely different. We would, had it not been for original sin, be living now in paradise and everything would be absolutely perfect. But because of this silly error, billions of people, the whole of humanity, has been tainted by it. But for the arrival of Jesus Christ, of course, who wipes the slate clean. So I think I'll leave it there. I'm sure that plenty of you will have comments about my interpretation and what I've said. I'm sure that lots of you will disagree with me and say that, you know, Stuart, you don't know how to read the Bible. Obviously, I'm coming to this for the first time in a long time, and I acknowledge that that there are biblical literalists who take this all literally, and I think most Christians are not literalists. Nevertheless, there's a lot in here which shapes how future generations and eras thought about things like knowledge and the whole concept of man, in particular the male of the species, ruling over all the living beings on the face of the earth, including women. So I think that's about it for now. Let me know what your comments are. And I'm not really sure how much more I'm going to do from Genesis, but let me know if you agree with my interpretation, my reading of it, and if you think that I've missed something, or that you're aware of other translations which might sort of shed some light on maybe some of my misunderstandings, or perhaps, you know, might illuminate some of the meanings in there. In the comments below, say a few words and let me know. Keep it polite, not just with me, but with others. You know, don't go calling people names and all that kind of nonsense. Otherwise, frankly, if I see any abuse, I just delete it. So, okay, that's all for now, and look forward to seeing you again soon.